This is In the Middle with Josh and Sarah Siders. We get it. You're probably going through something that's asking you to dig deep, think differently, and hold on against the odds.
So these are our thoughts about starting new things, shutting some things down, and being with you, right there in the middle.
Welcome back to the In the Middle podcast, the podcast for those of us who haven't arrived yet. I'm Sarah.
I'm Josh. It is so good to have you watching, listening,
Yes.
wherever you're at.
Yes, welcome back. We've got a shorter episode today, so hopefully you can digest this somewhere, maybe just a shorter road trip. We'll be talking about what we're too old for at this stage of our life. What are we too old for and what are we not too old for?
Yeah.
A lot of people like to use age as an excuse to not do things, but sometimes we need to use an age as an excuse to actually start doing something.
That's right.
Or stop. So we'll just revisit some of that. Our sponsor today is Warm Spring Days. Yay.
Such
oh
as
my
today.
gosh.
Hope it's warm wherever you're at.
Yes. It has been so beautiful just getting out
Yeah.
in the sun, getting some energy.
Taking a walk.
I know you've been doing that.
Yeah,
We
me too.
talked about that. So it's been so nice. Like March is like my time where I get back out there. So
That's right.
anyway, spring is finally here and you can feel it, like the energy
Yeah.
people have.
Yeah.
So thank you to Warm Spring Days for giving us good vibes
That's right.
on this.
Helping our mental health get back on track.
Oh
and
my
vitamin
gosh.
D absorption. and
I'm always like, how
all
am
the
I
things.
this vulnerable to weather? Like
Yeah, right.
I'm just
You
like,
live in the
how
worst
is
state for that. By
No,
the way.
it's so true. And people will be like, I walked outside and the sun hit my face and I was like happy. I have clients say this and I'm like, yeah, I know. Isn't it crazy how it changes our mood?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
So yeah, it is really funny. Anyways, so we want to just dive right in
Yeah,
to the topic today. And honestly, I feel like again, like last week, we could revisit this because,
Totally.
we're freestyling this stuff and we have, some thoughts in advance, but it's really about the conversation. And it feels like the more you go, the more you learn, about what it is. But this topic stood out to me on our list of upcoming things to discuss is like, what am I too old for? What is it like? Oh, I couldn't actually start that because I'm in my mid 40s and
That's to let it go.
early mid 40s. I don't know where I'm at. Anyway, early to mid. You're going to give, that's so nice of you.
So I'm in my mid.
You're mid. Okay. I'm early 40s, everyone. And so it's like, when I think about doing something new, sometimes there's that like novelty feeling. Oh, that would be so cool to do that. But then, there is this feeling sometimes, this sort of pall over ideas like, oh, it's too late. Like maybe that's another way to say that.
Yeah.
Is it too late for me to do something? Maybe people feel like it's too late to find a relationship if they're at this point and they haven't found one, or too late to completely do a career pivot. Totally maybe go back to school or learn something new.
Yeah.
And so is there a hard and fast rule for what makes something too late or not? So I wanted to address this like from that lens, and then also talk about like if you're still doing certain things at a certain age, like
Right.
you better cut that out.
Right.
So it's like, no, I'm too old for that.
Yeah, that's right.
But I'm not too old for that. So here's something I'm too old for: crop tops.
Yeah. Me too.
It's like, and in that category, like really edgy, like young,
Yeah.
and maybe not
Trendy,
even
like
so
cutting
hyper
edge trendy,
trend. Like there's stuff.
Yeah.
I was wearing some of those trendy like Gen Z things up until like my late 30s. And then I was like, I can feel that I am too old for this.
Right.
Like something has shifted in the way that I want to present myself in the world. And so I would say like, I'm a little bit too old for that. But you have kind of like the all black trendy look. And that works for you.
It works for me.
And you're not too old for that.
I'm not. I think black's always in style. So
That's so true.
yeah.
Can't go wrong.
And mostly it's not because I'm trying to be trendy. I'm trying to be kind of like efficient and not worry about, like styling or whatever. And it's more functional in a lot of ways of like, the kind of Steve Jobs, Barack Obama, like why put mental energy into something I don't really like. I like looking nice, but I don't really care about it that much.
Yeah.
So I have other things to worry about or try and decide.
Like it's like streamlined with, it's like a capsule wardrobe. In a way.
Yeah.
It's like
I could probably push into that and actually do that if I really wanted to. Maybe I will one of these days. I think there's something about the simplicity of that.
Yeah.
That's intriguing and attractive. So yeah, it's more kind of functional to me. And I think that was something in my early 40s where I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna do that. Like,
and that reflects back to last week's episode about reinventing yourself.
Yeah,
like
true.
sometimes it's a full overhaul, and sometimes it's like this is how I want to show up.
Right.
A personal vibe shift, a brand, a rebrand. And I remember that.
Yeah.
And I think I've done that a couple of times. And so reinventing yourself, it kind of goes along with like what am I too old to do?
Yeah. Are you ever too old to reinvent yourself?
I don't think so.
Yeah. As long as you're becoming more true to who you are.
Yes.
Like your true self, not your false self.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about this like layer when you're thinking about what am I too old to do? The right answer that I think people would expect me to say, the answer is like, you're never too old to do anything. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, eventually, like you might be too old to like, physically, maybe you're not capable of like climbing a big mountain or something like that, right? There's going to be like physical limitations, but we've talked about this before. And I just thought I think this is an interesting layer about this idea of, crystallized intelligence versus fluid. So fluid is that first half of life, learning, fluid.
A lot of abstract, creative thought, things like that. Yeah.
Yes. And so it's like new is welcome, right? And new, there's room for new. Right. And then the crystallized intelligence is that later, like second half.
A storehouse of information you can pull on and know how to apply it.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. And it's like, I know what I know.
Yeah.
And it's your brain actually going through, and this is like for women, I'm not sure about men, perimenopause, menopause, there's a lot of similar to puberty where your brain starts making shortcuts. It starts being like, okay, we know this path. We start like trimming off, parts like, neural pathways potentially that like maybe we're not using as much. Yeah. And so that's where the crystallized intelligence comes in. But at the same time, what's interesting is like, a lot of people find that even as their intelligence is crystallizing, they're actually returning to some of the things they loved when they were a kid.
Yeah.
And so what we find, I think, is that a lot of the kinds of things that you say, I'm too old to do, they are often creative outlets, creative things. Somebody like, for me, have in my mind, like, I would love to, be a pilot. Like that would be cool. But it's also like really scary. So I'm like, not sure what my relationship is with that. But I feel like I'm not too old to do that.
Yeah.
It is a big learning experience, but it's not like, I'm not going to go be a commercial pilot and completely change my career. Right. I just want to have that skill set and be able to, reserve a plane and go for a day trip or do something like that. It would be more like a hobby. So I think in the category of like things where we'd say, okay, I know that my intelligence is crystallizing. I know that I don't necessarily have all of those new neural pathways just like branching off, a million times a second potentially. It's more like I know what I know. Yeah. But a hobby that has kind of been like sitting there for a while. Yeah. That there's sort of like this creative outlet. I think that's definitely one that a lot of people I notice return to. And I would like to say, no, you're not too old to do that. Whether, you see all these stories of people who write novels or paint and they do it in the second half of life. Yeah. It's like it's part of this rediscovery, even in the midst of that crystallized intelligence that theoretically should just lock you into who you are. Yeah. But in some ways it creates a foundation for you to rediscover. So I'm curious, I don't know if some things are coming to mind for you of like, things that you have noticed yourself wanting to return to or like circling back to or I used to love that when I was younger and now I find myself like kind of wanting to do that again?
Nope, not as much for me.
Yeah.
It's typically like wanting to either maintain good practices, habits, hobbies, or learn something new. So,
Okay. Yeah.
one of my strengths finders is learner. So I'm just like want to learn new things about things.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not about returning as much for me. It's about finding the things that are life-giving and continuing to maintain and do those. And then think about, new hobbies. Like a couple years ago, started enjoying smoking meats.
Yeah.
So it's like,
You were of that age.
There's kind of that that tongue in cheek, like, okay, when a man turns 40, he's got 3 things to choose from: smoked meats, World War II history, or bird watching.
Birding, yes.
Yeah, and so I picked smoking meats.
Oh my god.
Who knows? Maybe down the road,
or like brewing IPAs, I think is.
Oh, that's another one.
Yeah.
Who knows? I may down the road pick up bird watching or World War II history.
Man.
Who knows? But
yeah,
right now it's enjoy good smoked barbecue. So
yeah, no, and thank goodness that you do. We have a friend who we've mentioned on the podcast, Michael Ashford. Totally got into birding. Got one of his kids into birding. They introduced me to the Merlin app, which is a birding app. You can listen to the birds.
Sure.
So for your warm spring days.
So you're walking around the neighborhood.
I literally was.
Yeah.
I was like, this is ruining my zen that I am doing this.
Like, oh, I hear a bird and I don't know what it is.
But it's so fun to know.
It's like
it's literally
people looking out their window. Come look, she's back.
Come
watch this lady. She can't put her phone down for a minute. Enjoy the outside.
I know that's what it looks like. But it makes me really happy. I'm like, ooh, I haven't heard that one before. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is like classic. I got into this in my 40s. Yeah. So for you, the way that you're seeing it is like progress, like I'm learning new things and like moving forward. What made you go, I want to climb mountains? Because that's part of the reinvention, but that's like a learning something new.
Yeah, I think
that was big.
Some of it is like I heard a author, pastor one time say, it's good. What he recommends for people in his church and in his sphere is like it's important for men to have hobbies.
Yeah.
Especially hobbies with other men. And he recommended that if you work kind of like a hands-on or blue collar job or some kind of physical activity, like find something that is intellectually stimulating as a hobby. Yeah. Chess, reading, a book club, something like that.
Yeah.
But if you work in knowledge work, right? If you sit maybe behind a desk, if you have more white collar, hands off, find something physical to do to get your body activated and moving.
Yeah.
Kind of that holistic kind of mindset of like, just remember you have a mind, you have a body, and put all of that into action. So for me,
interesting.
Went on a trip a couple years ago and found like, I really like the physical activity of hiking. Yeah. And especially in the mountains, and it's something to like, you kind of prep for, which I really appreciate.
You did, yes.
I appreciate the planning aspect of like, maximizing the travel opportunity. Yeah. But also the physical prep, like running, getting in better shape. Yeah. Improving your VO2 max, things like that. So there's just a big kind of challenge that you prep for.
Well, it was the preparation that like you have to commit to that, and I think that's the thing that like
you get to buy new gear too.
You got right, and I know that was fun for you, but it's like it was a big commitment, and I haven't hiked a 14er, and I haven't really like wanted to. Sure. And so it's like, but that was something new that for you is very all encompassing, right? It was like your time, your research, your body. And I personally, like knowing you for almost 2 decades now, like you're always a guy you read and you research, and there's a lot of cerebral. Yep. And so for you to get like in your body like that, I've definitely seen that's been
it's good.
A great thing for you.
Yeah. I hit kind of a low point, a couple years ago. My therapist was like, I think you need to go hiking. You need to go on a retreat. And that's when it clicked for me. Oh, this is a retreat. Yeah. Like I could go to a monastery. Yeah. And that I've done, prayer rooms and things like that. Yep. That's really beneficial. But like there's a retreat that is challenges the physicality aspect of who we are. So it was really combined for me. Like being outside. Yeah. doing something physical, but yeah, then the planning aspect.
And the bilateral stimulation, you even talked about
Exactly.
processing that way.
Processing some things. And yeah, it was really healing. And so my therapist said to do it. So I got to go do it regularly.
You got to do what your therapist says, everybody.
That's right.
I mean, not like,
She knows.
not really actually, like,
Well,
we're
yeah.
not giving advice. Like we're that feels a little scary, but yeah, I think that's the interesting piece. And in some ways this is an addendum to the reinventing yourself. Like, what are the things that when you are, dusting off old parts of yourself or developing new parts, what is the domain in which you can successfully do that, right? Like, what are the things that you can't do?
Yeah. And I would say, if the question is, am I too old for this? Am I getting too old for this? The response would be, well, it depends what it is.
Yes.
If you were trying to relive some glory days, I'm going to tell you.
Dang, that's good.
Let's say you decide to get to the gym and you're like, okay, this is what I used to lift in my late 20s.
Ooh.
There's going to, you could probably get there.
Yeah.
It's going to take some work. If you just step up to the bench and try and press some weight, you might end up hurting yourself.
Yes.
Right? And some of that is maybe you need to let some of that go.
Whoa, yeah.
It could be a good hobby.
Yeah.
But are you too old to get back to where you were in your 20s? Maybe. You might need to update your goals. You might still need to do the activity, whatever it is, but it may be, or you just give it enough time and understand the body doesn't recover. It's just different now.
Yep.
Mentally, you don't, because I can tell you, getting back to lifting what I did in my 20s, the physical recovery takes longer, but the mental recovery, I just feel worn down sometimes on some weeks, and I have to take more rest days, longer time to warm up. Otherwise, I pull stuff, And I think, so I, apply that to other areas.
Yeah.
Am I too old to get a pilot's license? Well, it depends. Do you have the resources?
Yes.
Do you have the patience? Do you have the time?
Do you have the eyesight?
Do you have the eyesight?
The mental health?
Right.
Yeah.
To put into that.
Yep.
If not, you might need to get a scooter license or something. Your motorcycle license, or I don't know, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
It just depends. So
Yeah.
it's are you getting too old? I think it would depend what it is and the reason why you're trying to do it, right? Because a lot of us are living in this kind of denial about or our brains tell us that we're in our 20s, but our body goes, oh, hold on a second. Just slow down a minute. And so realizing that, I think, is really, really important. And I can't let any more time go by without quoting Lethal Weapon, by the way. And Danny Glover's character, when Riggs of Murdoch, when Mel Gibson's character tries to pull him into some kind of detective police work. Yeah. He's like, I'm getting too old for this stuff. He doesn't say stuff. I'll let you know.
Oh, well, I would hope not.
Keep it appropriate. But yeah, I'm getting too old for this stuff. And it's like
that gritty.
It's like I didn't know what that meant when I, decades ago. But now I'm like, yeah, man. Yeah, I see you.
Yeah.
I feel that deeply in my soul.
Getting too old for this stuff.
For hijinks. So I think that maybe segues into what you're about to ask. Like, what things are you too old for?
Yeah. What things are you too old for?
Getting mixed up in hijinks.
I think that it's like I'm too old to keep making the same mistakes.
Absolutely.
To participate in insanity where I do the same things and I expect different results.
Right.
And usually we have an area of our lives that there is a combined set of habits.
Right.
Like a feedback loop. It's a physical thing. Like I keep doing the same things.
Right.
I keep a mindset, so there, it's like
some
habit,
kind of limiting belief.
Yep. And it's like
some kind of trauma from childhood even.
Yeah. And you're like, this is causing problems for me. And it continues to cause problems. And so I've realized in those situations, I have to evaluate that how it's connected with my sense of self.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that, that was something you talked about with the criteria about why are you doing this? Why are you trying to relive the glory days? Are you trying to prove to something to someone? Are you trying to be in your first stage of life and just be in accomplishment mode.
Right.
What is the reason for this? And really trying to be honest, because you do have to have a certain humility in the second half of life about your limitations.
Yep.
And even though you have this intelligence, crystallized intelligence, and this wisdom, you also have different limits that you didn't have before. It's hard to reckon with that.
Yeah.
And so I think, like, for me, that's been a piece where I've had this kind of like category of my life that's felt like unconquerable. And I've had to like really look like 2 or 3 layers down about how am I seeing this as part of me? Like, this is just how I am. This is just like it's a mindset thing. And so I haven't had room to do something different because it would break my sense of self.
Right.
If I did it.
Right.
And even like, how does this go against, like, how does the behaviors or the habits that I have that I don't like align with values that I do like?
Yeah.
Anytime I have a problematic behavior, it almost always connects with a value that I hold dear. Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, I can't stop doing that because it will break my value.
Yeah.
It will break my sense of identity. And so I think when we're trying to think about like doing something new in midlife, like, yes, we are too old for nonsense, but we're going to continue doing it if there's a value system in place that's like, well, I really need to be that way. That, how do I maintain my sense of honor and integrity and wholeness and not do this thing that I've been doing? So
I'll bring up a related thing. I think it's kind of related.
Okay.
In your midlife, I think you are too old to blame others for your life.
Oh, it's so good.
Right? I think you get
Do we
to
still snap?
You can.
I agree. I agree.
Obviously, unless there's some kind of limiting circumstance or like discrimination or something.
Yeah.
So all things being equal is our assumption. You're too old in midlife to blame other people for the results that you're getting from your life.
Oh my gosh, and that's so true.
You may not realize that you've been doing it, or you may not realize like, oh, the outcomes that I'm seeing, the outputs that I'm getting.
Yep.
This is my responsibility, and this is my fault.
Yeah.
Yes, everybody has family of origin issues. Yes, everybody has stuff that they are going through.
Yeah.
But so much of all of that, so much of the stuff we're going through is the results of our behavior, our input into the system. But I think in your 40s, that's your chance to like grow older and wiser, and not just older.
Amen.
Right? And
Amen.
so
More snaps.
In midlife, you are taking that time, hopefully, to look under the hood, to look a couple layers deep and go, okay, why do I do that? Why do I feel so angry? Why do I feel so tired all the time? Why? It's almost like you're raising yourself as a teenager, right? You're like, all right, buddy, like, just remember, if you eat junk and you watch junk and you don't sleep, you're going to feel like junk.
Yes,
just
and we do
total
say these things.
Hypothetical situation in our household. But it's almost like you're reparenting yourself.
Yes.
Right? And like you have to be kind to yourself, because so much of like what inputs we've given into our life are reactions maybe against something earlier, or like we just didn't know any better. I think midlife is the time where we have the ego strength to like self-evaluate with honesty. Maybe we have some support systems or other inputs that can help us see our blind spots, but ultimately like we have to take responsibility for it. If this is my life, and if I play the tape forward 2 decades, 3 decades, 4 decades,
that right there,
and I don't like what I'm seeing, then it's up to me to do something about it. Because I can't live any longer blaming that person or that person or that system or this thing. I've got to do something for myself about it.
Yes. And I think like what I would say, in the vein of our theme is like, you're never too old to course correct. Like,
that's right.
Even if you're near death.
I'll give you a snap for that.
Thank you. Like, if you're even, you have a terminal illness and you're trying to reconnect with your family, like we see this, like people are often willing to take a leap when there's that deadline. But like you said, you can create an imagined deadline where it's like, if I continue doing this thing that I'm too old to be doing.
Right.
If I keep doing it 1 decade, 2 decades, 4 down the road, what does my life look like? And so it's like, I'm too old to be doing this, So what's up with that, right? What
Yeah.
are the different elements
and
of that?
I'll tell you this: there was an app that came out. I don't know if I would recommend it, so I'm not going to name it. But you basically take your age, your weight, your physical health, a lot of that stuff, and put those in, and then you put your stress level. You put in maybe a little bit of family history, and it gives you kind of a day of death.
Oh my
Like
gosh!
people that live this way, and continue to live this way. Here's the date at which you can expect.
Oh,
and I think it's a little imprecise because there's a lot of it's not scientific. It's more kind of like sociological, right?
Okay,
but it takes those inputs
wow.
and gives you this estimate, and you have to look at that and go, okay, 35 years, huh?
Yes.
40 years, huh?
Yeah.
20 years, huh? Right?
Woo.
And that
wow.
It's meant to be that wake up call.
Yeah.
Like, are you maximizing your life for what you want out, but am I going to leave the people I love around me better off?
Yeah.
And do I have the time to do the things I want to do to make the difference that I have been created to make?
Wow.
Things like that. And I think, there's different ways to even, I saw an app that just did a kind of a countdown by dots. Your life represented in dots, and it was counting down, things like that. So there's different representations, I would even say, like, that can help you wake up to the fact that you're not going to live forever. And I also think that's that gift of limits that you wake up to in your midlife, especially, is that if this is midlife, it's about half done.
Yeah, wow.
Or a third done, or a third left.
Yes.
And I think that's a good reminder.
Yeah, that's like I'm halfway. I got a third.
Especially during Lent, we are dust, right?
Oh my gosh.
We are.
Wow.
We are simply dust, and to the dust we shall return. And that's a good reminder of like, what are we going to do?
It's like having a deadline where it's like an expiration date, something where it's like, this isn't going to be here forever.
Yeah.
That helps you evaluate.
It does.
Right. And I think like what you realize is that you're not too old to do the things that you need to do. You're not too old to take the steps that you need to take. You're not too old, even if it's like, and again, it's like, is it too late? Is it kind of the question that's implied? And it's like, is it too late to, restore relationships? Is it too late to invest in my faith? Is it too late to?
That's right.
Set up a investment fund for my
it's like that saying, you can do anything, but you can't do everything.
Yeah, that's good.
And that has to be driven home.
That's so good.
You can't do everything, so you have to prioritize, and you have to take care of the big rocks. You have to do the important things. Those need to get done.
And I think like if you don't have your values, then you are going to be in trouble.
All looks good. It's like it's all equal.
Yep.
It's not.
No, it is not. So there's obviously a lot more to say on this, but we wanted to keep it a little bit concise today. Yeah. We may end up coming back to this from a different angle, but
I would say, just because if somebody's wondering, what do I do now with this? It could be two things. It could be identify some of your values, or maybe circle back to them, because I think sometimes 100%. They shift from your 20s to your 30s to your 40s to figure out what really is important.
Yep.
So really clarifying your personal values, that will help chart the course.
Yes.
And then for those that are brave, maybe look into one of those like timelined end of life estimator things.
Wow.
Average American in the Midwest lives till late 80s, early 70s. What is it anymore? 80. And look at that and sit with that, and hopefully that helps you have some sobriety about things.
The prioritization that happens from your values, from the sense of time, and then being like, okay, I can't do everything. Yeah. What can I do? I'm not too old.
Right.
So now what?
Right.
So I think that's like kind of a takeaway for me from this conversation. So what are you reading, watching, or listening to right now?
Yeah, good question. I am reading I just blanked on the name. It's Henry Nouwen.
Oh yeah.
Show Me the Way, I think is what it's called. It's daily Lenten readings. So I just started that last week. obviously.
Yeah.
And it's just been really good. A little devotional during Lent, and some thought-provoking things from Henry now.
That's awesome. I love him, and I gotta look into that.
You should.
James and I have been watching Sound of Music because we've been doing the musicals. He was in Mary Poppins at the high school, and so we were like, all right, what else is next? That's awesome. So we started it last night, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good, and it was fun to see him kind of, get into it a little bit. So we have the second half we have to finish.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that one was good. What's saving your butt?
What's saving my butt right now? I'm gonna steal our sponsor. Warm
Oh my gosh.
Days.
Okay, no, I'm gonna steal it too.
You're gonna steal it too. Good.
It is literally like such a game changer. It's shocking. Like I can feel myself like thawing.
Like
undying.
And I'll tell you this, I don't even have that big of a reaction about daylight savings as like a lot of other people do, because I'm like, oh, the light's changing. Yeah. It's light
good.
now.
It's light later.
Exactly.
I know. I was not happy about it the day of, but then eventually I was like, even the last couple of days, I'm like, oh, this is nice.
This is nice.
Fine. I'm still mad about it.
Yeah.
But it does. Okay. It is amazing. Yeah, it is amazing. So anyways, so get out there and enjoy it.
Yes, please do.
If it's springtime where you are. So we'll be back here next week with another episode of In the Middle. Until next time, we'd love to hear from you, your thoughts on what you're not too old to do or what you are too old to do, like you're not putting up with this anymore. Either category, drop it in the comments on one of the platforms you're listening on, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, see you next week. We are so glad to be with you right there in the middle. This is the In the Middle podcast with Josh and Sarah Siders. Visit inthemiddlecoaching.co for other resources, courses, and helpful tools.